Look, I'm about to tell you something that's going to sound absolutely insane, but I need you to hear me out. Everyone's acting like I'm some kind of monster, a villain in a story they've written for me. And honestly, I'm starting to lose my mind over this whole thing. My name is Lillian. I'm 51, and up until 3 months ago, I thought I had a perfect life. Not just good, perfect. 33 years of marriage to the same man, Arthur. 3 amazing kids, Audrey, Paige, and Graham, all grown up and forging their own paths. A nice house with a garden I babied every spring, tucked away in a decent neighborhood. We were the whole suburban dream package. The couple other people looked at and thought, that's how you do it. It all started with a box. A ridiculously cheerful-looking box with a stylized tree on it. Arthur got an Ancestry DNA kit for his birthday from our youngest, Graham. We all thought it would be a fun, harmless family activity. You know how those things work. You spit in a tube, send it off, and 6 weeks later, you find out you're 12% Scandinavian or whatever. Maybe you discover a third cousin in Idaho. It was supposed to be harmless family bonding. Wrong. So incredibly, catastrophically wrong. I should probably back up and give you some context. Our family dynamic, well, it was stable. Arthur has always been the quiet type. The kind of man who goes to his accounting job every day, comes home at 6, eats the dinner I've made, watches his shows in his favorite recliner, and doesn't cause a lick of drama. Honestly, for years, I felt like I was married to a piece of furniture. A very reliable, handsome piece of furniture, but furniture nonetheless. I'm not complaining steady is good, right? But between you and me, there were times over the years when I felt like I was doing all the emotional heavy lifting. I planned every vacation, every holiday gathering, managed our social calendar, made sure we looked good as a couple. He just coasted along while I kept the engine of our life running smoothly. Our kids are great, though. Audrey is 29, a lawyer in the city, sharp and ambitious. Paige, at 26, is a graphic designer, more of a free spirit. And Graham, who just turned 22, is still figuring things out, taking a gap year. Normal family stuff. They've always been daddy's girls, though, which used to annoy me a little, if I'm being honest. I was the one who handled the parent-teacher conferences, the friendship drama, their scraped knees and broken hearts. But somehow Arthur, with his quiet presence and rare goofy jokes, was the hero, the fun parent. Whatever, that's ancient history now. So, anyway, we all did these DNA tests. We sat around the living room, swabbing our cheeks, and sealing the vials like it was some high school science project. Arthur was especially excited. He never knew his biological father. His mom remarried when he was little, and that's the only dad he's ever known. He thought maybe, just maybe, the test would give him a clue, a name, a piece of that missing puzzle. It was sweet, really. His quiet hope was palpable. God, if we had known what was coming, we would have thrown those stupid kits in the trash and set them on fire. The results took about 6 weeks. The kids got theirs first, their notifications pinging on their phones one Sunday afternoon. I remember they were all gathered around Paige's laptop in the living room, comparing their results and laughing. "Look, I'm more Irish than you are," Graham crowed. "No way, mine says I have roots in the Basque Country," Paige shot back. I was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner, the rhythmic thud of the knife on the cutting board a familiar comfort. I was half listening to their cheerful chatter, smiling to myself. This was good. This was what a family was supposed to be. And then, the chatter stopped. It wasn't a gradual tapering off. It was abrupt, like someone had flipped a switch. The sudden, heavy silence that followed was so profound it felt like a physical weight pressing down on the house. That's when I knew. I didn't know what, but I knew something was very, very wrong. My hands froze over the cutting board. I slowly put the knife down, wiped my hands on a dish towel, and walked into the living room. All 3 of them were staring at the computer screen, their faces pale masks of confusion and disbelief. My stomach started doing flips, a cold dread coiling inside me. I could tell by the way they were looking at each other, sidelong frightened glances, that they had discovered something they weren't supposed to know. Audrey, my oldest, my pragmatic lawyer, looked up at me. Her expression was one I'd never seen before. It was like she was seeing me for the first time in her life and didn't like what she was looking at. Her eyes, usually so full of confident intelligence, were wide with a kind of horrified clarity. "Mom?" she said, her voice barely a whisper. "What is this?" That's when she told me. The DNA results showed that she and her sister, Paige, were not genetically related to their father at all. Zero shared DNA. Our son, Graham, matched perfectly with Arthur. But the girls, nothing. Based on those results, they might as well have been complete strangers. The floor didn't just drop out from under me, it ceased to exist. For a moment, the world was a vortex of spinning colors and muffled sounds. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could register was the word zero echoing in the silent room. This wasn't supposed to happen. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. We were supposed to find out we were part Scottish or something fun like that, not detonate a bomb in the center of our family. 3 pairs of eyes were fixed on me, waiting. Audrey's, sharp and accusatory. Paige's, wide with hurt and confusion. Graham's, just utterly lost. They were waiting for an explanation, for me to laugh and say it was a glitch, a mistake, a joke. But I just stood there like an idiot, my mouth hanging open, my mind a blank wall of sheer, unadulterated panic. What was I supposed to say? How do you explain 30 years of a lie you had almost convinced yourself wasn't a lie at all? So, I did what any normal person would do when their meticulously constructed world implodes in front of their children. I screamed. It wasn't a loud scream, more like a strangled gasp of air, and then I turned and ran to my bedroom and locked the door. I know how that sounds. Cowardly. Hysterical. But you have to understand, I was in complete shock. This was supposed to be our little family science experiment, not an episode of a trashy daytime talk show. I needed time. I needed a moment to think, to figure out how to handle this without destroying everything we'd built together. Because here's the thing nobody seems to understand. I never, ever wanted anyone to get hurt by this. I stayed locked in that bedroom for 2 hours. And let me tell you, those were the longest 2 hours of my entire life. I sat on the edge of our marital bed, the floral comforter suddenly feeling like a foreign object, and just trembled. I kept hoping I'd heard wrong. Maybe there was some kind of mistake with the test results. Maybe this was all just a bad dream, and I would wake up to the smell of my roasting chicken and the sound of my children's laughter. But deep down, a cold, hard knot of truth was tightening in my gut. I knew exactly what those results meant. And I knew I was about to have to confess to something I thought I'd buried so deep it would never see the light of day. The whole time I sat there, trying not to hyperventilate, I kept thinking about how unfair this all was. Why now? Why, after all these years of having a perfectly good family and a perfectly good marriage, did this have to come out? Nobody was getting hurt by not knowing. The girls loved their dad. Arthur loved them with a fierce, quiet devotion that was the bedrock of their lives. We've been happy. What was the point of destroying all that over something that happened when I was barely 30 years old? It felt like a cosmic cruelty, a punishment that didn't fit the crime, especially since the crime, in my mind, had been over for decades. I could hear their muffled voices from the living room. I couldn't make out the words, but the cadence was low and somber. I knew Arthur was out there with them now. He would have come home from his Saturday errands to find this catastrophe. I could picture his face, the slow dawning of confusion, the way he would look to the kids for an explanation. And I knew there was no way around this. There was no lie I could spin, no excuse I could invent that would fix it. I had to come clean about everything, even though every fiber of my being wanted to just pack a bag and disappear forever rather than face what was coming next. Finally, with legs that felt like lead, I unlocked the door and walked back out. The scene that greeted me was worse than I had imagined. All 4 of them were sitting around the kitchen table, the place where we'd shared thousands of meals, celebrated birthdays, and helped with homework. Now, it looked like they were waiting for a funeral to start. Arthur's face. I'd never seen an expression like that on him before. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was complete and utter blankness. Like someone had just told him everything he thought he knew about his life was a lie. Which, to be fair, was pretty much exactly what had just happened. I sat down at the empty chair at the head of the table. I took a deep breath that did nothing to calm the frantic beating of my heart. There was no good way to do this, so I just started talking. His name was Dean. I began, my voice small and thin. He used to live 3 houses down from us, back when we first moved to this neighborhood. I told them about him. He was a nice guy, friendly, the kind of neighbor who'd help you move furniture or jump your car battery. He and Arthur actually got along really well. They'd hang out in the garage, working on their cars, watching football games. Normal guy stuff. The affair started about 4 years into our marriage. I don't even remember exactly how it began. A lingering conversation on the sidewalk. A shared laugh that felt a little too intimate. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, we were meeting up whenever we could find time alone. I tried to explain the context, the circumstances. Arthur, you were working such long hours back then, I said, looking at his stony face. Trying to make partner at the firm. I was home all day with a toddler. I gestured vaguely toward Audrey. And I was so isolated. So lonely. Dean was just there. He was available and interested. He paid attention to me in a way that felt like a lifeline. It went on for 4 years. 4 years of sneaking around, of making excuses, of living this double life that honestly became almost normal after a while. The girls were both born during that time. And yes, I knew. I knew there was a chance they might not be Arthur's biological children. But I also knew there was a chance they were. It wasn't like I was keeping track of dates or anything scientific like that. I was just living my life, caught in a current I didn't know how to escape, and hoping for the best. The affair ended when Dean got a job transfer and moved across the country. There was no dramatic breakup. No big emotional scene. He just left. And that was that. I told myself it was a sign, a chance to start over. I decided then and there to focus on my marriage and my family. And I did. I threw myself into being the best wife and mother I could be. And honestly, I think I succeeded. We had good years after that. Really good years. I never told anyone because what would have been the point? I pleaded, my gaze moving from face to face. Dean was gone, it was over. Bringing it up would have just hurt people for no reason. Arthur didn't need to know. The girls didn't need to know. Nobody needed to know. Some things are better left buried. The entire time I spoke, I had to watch their faces. I had to watch Arthur's blankness slowly curdle into a kind of pained disbelief as he realized that 2 of the children he'd raised from birth, 2 of the people he loved most in the world, weren't actually his. I had to watch Audrey and Paige process the fact that the man they'd called dad their entire lives wasn't their real father. I kept emphasizing how much I loved all of them, how the affair didn't mean anything compared to our family, how I'd chosen to end it and focus on what really mattered. None of our life together was fake, none of the memories or the love we'd shared were meaningless just because of some biology results. Arthur just sat there the entire time, not saying a word. The girls were crying silently, tears tracking down their cheeks. Graham looked like he was in shock, his face ashen. I felt like I was talking to a room full of strangers. By the time I finished, I was crying too, begging them to understand. This doesn't change anything, I sobbed. Not about how much I love you, or how good our life together has been. But looking at their faces, I could tell that as far as they were concerned, everything had already changed. The silence that followed my confession was deafening. Finally, Arthur spoke. His voice was different, flat and cold in a way I'd never heard. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Are you sure they aren't mine?" I had to explain that yes, based on the DNA, I was sure. "How long?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "How long have you known this was a possibility?" "I always knew it was a possibility," I admitted. "But I hoped it wouldn't matter." That's when he really lost it. Not by screaming or yelling, which honestly might have been easier to deal with, but with this quiet kind of fury that was way more terrifying. He started asking me all these questions about the timeline, about specific dates and events, trying to piece together exactly when everything happened and how long I'd been lying to him. And that's where I think he was being completely unfair. I wasn't lying, exactly. I was just not bringing up something that didn't need to be brought up. There's a difference. What was I supposed to do? Sit him down one day and say, "Hey, honey, just so you know, there's a chance 2 of our kids aren't actually yours biologically, but don't worry about it because I love you and we're happy?" That would have been cruel. The night ended with 4 words from Arthur that felt like a life sentence. "I need you to leave." For how long? I asked, my voice trembling. I don't know. Can we, can we talk about this in counseling? Maybe. Not right now. And just like that, after 33 years of marriage, I was packing a suitcase in the middle of the night, my husband watching me with dead eyes from the doorway. He had kicked me out of my own house over something that happened before most people even owned a cell phone. Living at my sister Marianne's house has been absolutely miserable. It's not her fault, not really. Her guest room is perfectly comfortable. But the whole house smells of her cloying potpourri and her twice-divorced pity. She keeps giving me these looks, these deep, disappointed sighs like she's a saint dealing with a fallen woman. It's rich, coming from someone who can't keep a relationship together for more than 2 years. But the worst part is Arthur. I've tried everything. I've called, but he lets it go to voicemail. I've texted long, pleading paragraphs, only to be met with a terse, "I need more time." I even drove to the house once, but he just spoke to me through the screen door, his face a grim mask, telling me to respect his space. He acts like I'm some kind of stranger he doesn't want to deal with. What really gets me, what keeps me up at night stewing in Marianne's lavender-scented guest room, is how everyone's reacting. They're acting like this affair was some kind of ongoing betrayal instead of something that ended decades ago. I have been faithful to my husband for almost 30 years. 30 years. But apparently, that doesn't count for anything. It's all been erased by a mistake I made when I was barely out of my 20s. And can we talk about Arthur back then? Because everyone is painting him as this perfect, wounded victim. But the truth is, he was hardly around during those early years. He was always at the office, always working late, always chasing that promotion. When he did get home, he was tired, stressed, and emotionally distant. I was home alone with a toddler most of the time, feeling invisible and unappreciated. When Dean started paying attention to me, when he asked about my day and actually listened to the answer, when he made me feel seen and valued, it felt like what I deserved. I'm not saying the affair was right, but context matters. I wasn't some thrill-seeking cheater sneaking around for fun. I was a lonely young woman whose husband wasn't meeting her emotional needs, and I found comfort with someone who actually seemed to care about me as a person. The fact that it lasted 4 years should tell you something about how neglected I was feeling. But try explaining that to anyone now. Try explaining that to Marianne, and she just purses her lips and says, "Lillian, you need to take accountability for what you did." What does that even mean? I ended the affair. I focused on my family. I've been a good wife and mother for 3 decades since then. How much more accountable can I be? The really frustrating part is watching Arthur get all this sympathy, while I'm being treated like a pariah. Our mutual friends, people who have been in our home for countless dinner parties, keep reaching out to him. Brenda from next door, who I've known for 20 years, brought him a casserole. A casserole? Meanwhile, I'm living in my sister's guest room, being lectured about honesty and commitment by people who have no idea what it's like to navigate the complexities of a long-term marriage. He's also been meeting with some therapist, which honestly feels like another way to avoid dealing with our problems together, a shield. Every time I suggest couples counseling, he says he's not ready for that yet, that he needs to process his own feelings first. But how long is that supposed to take? It's been 3 months already, and if anything, he seems to be getting more distant, not working toward forgiveness. It's like he's decided that being the victim is more important to him than saving our marriage. And honestly, it's starting to make me wonder if this is really the man I thought I married. The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday. I recognized the letterhead of a downtown law firm immediately. My hands shook as I tore it open. Arthur had filed for divorce. It turned out all that thinking time he needed was actually time to meet with lawyers and financial advisors. Time to figure out how to completely and utterly screw me over. The divorce proceedings have been brutal. He hired some shark of an attorney, a woman who looks at me in depositions like I'm something she scraped off her shoe. They've been digging into every aspect of our marriage, trying to paint me as this deceitful, manipulative person who can't be trusted. They've requested bank records, phone records, social media history, everything they can think of to build a case that I've been dishonest about other things, too. And the crazy thing is, they actually found stuff. Not affairs, of course not. I have been completely faithful since Dean, but little things, things I'd forgotten about. Like how I opened a credit card a few years ago and didn't tell him about it right away because I wanted to buy him a surprise anniversary gift. Or how I'd sometimes tell him I was going to lunch with girlfriends when I was actually just going shopping by myself, wanting a few hours of peace. Normal stuff. Stuff that every married person does to maintain a tiny sliver of their own identity. But now it's all being twisted, presented as evidence of a pattern of deception. Of the worst part, worse than the lawyers and the financial statements, is how our kids have been reacting. At first, they were trying to stay neutral, calling us both, trying to maintain relationships. But as more details have come out during the divorce process, as Arthur's lawyer meticulously lays out every instance of my perceived dishonesty, they've been pulling away from me. Last week, Audrey called me. Her voice was cold, professional, like she was speaking to a client. "Mom, I'm just really disappointed in how you've handled all this," she said. "Why couldn't you have just been honest from the beginning?" "Honest about what, Audrey? Blowing up our family 25 years ago? Is that what you wanted?" I shot back, my voice sharp with hurt. "I wanted a mother I could trust," she said, and then she hung up. Even Marianne has been making comments, little digs about how I need to own my mistakes and accept the consequences. Easy for her to say. She's never had to navigate a complicated 33-year marriage or make difficult decisions about what information to share and what to keep private to protect the peace. Meanwhile, Arthur has become Saint Arthur, the wronged husband, the noble father. He's gotten so much sympathy and support, it's sickening. People bring him meals, they invite him to social events, they check on his well-being. I've been basically ostracized from our entire social circle. And through the grapevine, through a reluctant Marianne, I found out he's been doing better than fine. He's lost weight. He's joined a hiking group. He's been more social than I've ever seen him. Brenda told Marianne he seems more relaxed and happier than he's been in years. So much for being devastated and needing time to heal. It's almost like this whole situation has given him an excuse, an escape hatch from a marriage he was already tired of. Because let's be honest, our marriage hasn't been perfect for a long time. We've been going through the motions for years, more like roommates than husband and wife. And maybe this DNA test thing just gave him a convenient, morally superior reason to blow everything up instead of doing the hard work of reconnecting. It's been 6 months now since this whole nightmare started. 6 months of sleeping in a strange bed, of talking to lawyers, of seeing my children's names pop up on my phone and feeling a jolt of anxiety instead of joy. The divorce isn't final yet, but it feels like a foregone conclusion. I've accepted it, mostly. Or at least, I've accepted the reality of it. Last month, I found out that he's been seeing someone, a woman named Chloe he met through his hiking group. When I confronted him about it during a tense phone call about finances, he had the nerve to tell me that his personal life was none of my business anymore. The divorce isn't even final, and he's already moved on. Like our entire life together meant nothing. She's younger than me, of course. Probably never been married, definitely doesn't have kids. And from what I've heard, she finds his whole starting over after a deep betrayal story incredibly romantic. She has no idea. No idea what it's actually like to be married for decades, to navigate the complexities of raising children and managing a household and keeping a relationship together through all the challenges that life throws at you. 2 weeks ago, I saw them. I was at the grocery store, just trying to get through the mundane task of buying milk and bread. I was in the produce section, trying to decide between organic and regular spinach, when I heard a familiar laugh. My head snapped up. There he was, Arthur. And he was with her. Chloe. She was laughing, her head thrown back, holding his hand as they stood by the avocados. They looked like teenagers. He looked happy. Genuinely, uncomplicatedly happy in a way I hadn't seen him look in years. He saw me, too. For just a second, our eyes met across the brightly lit displays of fruits and vegetables. The world seemed to stop. In that 1 second, I expected to see something, some kind of recognition, some acknowledgement of the 33 years we had shared, some hint of sadness or regret about how things had turned out. Instead, he just looked right through me. His eyes, the same eyes that had watched our children be born, the same eyes that had looked at me across the dinner table thousands of times, held nothing. No anger, no sadness, no recognition. It was the look you give a complete stranger who happens to be in your way. Then he turned back to his girlfriend, said something that made her laugh again, and they walked away, pushing their cart toward the dairy aisle. That's when it really hit me. This was actually over. Not just the marriage, but any chance of salvaging anything positive from our life together. He'd completely written me off, erased me from his story, and moved on like I'd never mattered to him at all. Standing there in that grocery store, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, watching the man I'd spent my entire adult life with start a new chapter with someone who would never understand what we'd been through together, I realized that maybe I'd been wrong about a lot of things. Maybe the affair had mattered more than I thought it did. Maybe keeping it a secret for all those years had been a bigger betrayal than I ever understood. But even now, even seeing how everything has turned out, I still don't know what I was supposed to do differently. I still think that sometimes, protecting the people you love means keeping painful truths to yourself. I still believe that 30 years of faithful marriage should count for something, even if it was built on a foundation that wasn't completely honest. The problem is, none of that matters anymore. The story has been written, and I am the villain. Because while I was trying to protect everyone from a version of the truth I thought would destroy them, he was falling in love with someone else's version of honesty. And now, I'm the one who has to live with the consequences of choices I made when I was too young to understand what they would cost me, decades later. I am alone, and he is happy. And I can't, for the life of me, figure out how that is fair